So the agenda, in terms of what I'm going to cover today, a lot of you out there listening may be suffering from imposter syndrome, but maybe you don't know what it is. So I'm going to explain a little bit more about what imposter syndrome is, how it shows up, because it shows up in a few different ways. I'm also going to talk about who gets it, and this might surprise you as well. And then I'm going to end with what we can do about it. So really the important thing about learning, how can we manage and overcome our inner imposter? So first of all, what actually is imposter syndrome? And I'm sure there's a few of these phrases that you can relate to. So it really boils down to this. I'm a fraud and I'm going to be found out. So it's not just doubting your own abilities, it's thinking that other people are judging you and that they're going to find you out for the fraud that you think you are. So that really is the kind of the overarching theme, if you like. Everyone else knows much more than I do. So you assume that other people know loads and loads of things, and what you know is only a fraction of what everyone else knows, because everyone else is much more intelligent than you are. I don't have what it takes. So you are imposing this kind of self-limiting beliefs on yourself, saying that you don't believe that you have what it takes in order to fulfill the role, in order to apply for a specific role, in order to get a promotion. So whatever it is that you might think of, you make the assumption that you don't have what it takes to deliver. They're going to realize I'm not up to the job. So this could be as a result of taking on a new project. It could be a new role that you've taken. It could be a promotion that you've recently got. But you feel that people are going to find you out somehow, like, you know, that you've been conning people for years, and they're all of a sudden they're going to find you out for the total fraud, and it's all going to come crashing down around you. It shows up in some other ways as well. So it's not good enough. So if you're working on a project, for example, and you're trying to reach that level of perfection where everything has to be exactly right, it has to be absolutely 100% perfect, otherwise you're a complete and utter fraud. I'm not ready. So holding yourself back from potential opportunities that come up because you're trying to convince yourself that you're not ready for that opportunity yet. Not putting yourself forward. So that could be not putting yourself forward for opportunities, but also not having your voice heard. So if you're in a team meeting, for example, and you're not speaking up, you're not sharing these wonderful ideas that you have, that could be something that really impacts on the organization's creativity and their ability to innovate if you're not putting forward your ideas. But that is another way that it shows up. I knew I was going to fail. And this is something where you leave things till the very last minute because you have this self-sabotage approach. You think you're going to fail anyway, you leave it till the last minute, and lo and behold, you haven't done a very good job because you haven't had enough time to complete it. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy then, and you've ended up failing, or you know, it's met with the expectations that you set for yourself, essentially. Overcompensation then. So that is, if you think that people are going to find you out, so there must be some sort of way that you can overcompensate in other ways. And for example, one example of that is working longer hours to try and mask what it is. So showing how busy you are and how capable you are to the outside world, while inside you're really struggling and you think that people are going to find you out for this fraud. In terms of who gets it then. So 70% of people will suffer from imposter syndrome at some stage in their career. That's a shocking statistic. And I always do wonder who are the other 30% who have never had imposter syndrome, because I have definitely suffered from imposter syndrome. And I'm sure if you're listening to this, that you have too. The thing to really take away from this is, because oftentimes if you're suffering from imposter syndrome, you feel very isolated, you feel very alone in your suffering, and you think if I tell someone that I have imposter syndrome, that's a surefire way that they're going to realize that I am actually a total fraud. And there is this thing called imposter syndrome, but I really am an imposter. So it's about knowing that if you have imposter syndrome, you're definitely not alone. And if you verbalize that to someone else, then they can share and they can help in that. More on that when I talk about ways to overcome imposter syndrome. And the reason I highlighted the word people here is oftentimes it's assumed that imposter syndrome is something that women suffer from. It is actually something that men and women suffer from. I shared something on my LinkedIn a number of months ago, and I was so surprised with the number of men who commented publicly or messaged me privately and said, do you know what? This is something I've been suffering from for years. I didn't even know it was a thing. Thank you so much for giving it a name, for just telling me that this is a real thing, that it is something, you know, it's not just me doubting my own abilities, but it is actually it's a real thing. The other thing to bear in mind with this as well is even celebrities get imposter syndrome. So Tom Hanks has spoken openly about it. David Tennant, who played Doctor Who, he was waiting for that proverbial knock on the door all through his acting career, waiting for that knock on the door to say, right, David, you've had your fun, and now it's time to send in the real actors. So it's not just something for, you know, basically everyone at some stage suffers from imposter syndrome. And you're not going to reach a stage in your career where you oftentimes we can look and admire people who are ahead of us in the career ladder, for example, or some leaders in the organization, and you can think, wow, they've really made it, they've got to this certain level of success, I want to be there, and I know when I'm there, you know, I'm going to be brilliant. It doesn't really work that way. You don't suddenly get to a level of success that you look around and you think, oh wow, you know, I totally deserve this and I'm so lucky. And imposter syndrome can really hit you even at those senior levels. So it's something to bear in mind as well, that you don't suddenly reach this level of success and your imposter syndrome goes away, but you look at other people from the outside and you think, wow, they've got it all together, there's no way they suffer from imposter syndrome. But actually, if you spoke to them, you know, privately, they do. I want to talk more as well about the kinds of imposters. So there are 5 different kinds of imposters. So I will talk about these one by one and just explain a little bit more about what it means. So the first one is a perfectionist. So these are broken down into 5 different types, but I know for me personally, I can definitely relate to at least 3 of these different types. So you might be the same, that you can relate to more than just one. So it's not about just finding one that you relate to, but it might resonate with you that you relate to quite a few of them actually. So the first one is perfectionist. And a perfectionist is someone who's always striving for the perfectionism, for essentially the unattainable, and nothing is ever good enough. And if you make a mistake, or if everything is not 100% correct, then you feel this sense of failure and you feel like you're a total fraud, and people are going to judge you and people are going to find you out, that you're not this, you know, perfect thing that you claim to be, that you're not brilliant at absolutely 100% everything. So that's the kind of the perfectionism element of it. Then you have the natural genius. So the natural genius is someone who typically was really good in school, they went to college, they got top grades, everything always comes really naturally to them. So they can learn things quite easily, they can pick them up. You know, you can try your hand at new skills, you can try your hand at new software, and you learn things quite easily. The difficulty is when this type of imposter comes across something that they don't pick up very easily, or something that is hard to learn or hard to do. That's when imposter syndrome creeps in and they think, oh, well, you know, I'm not brilliant at that straight away, so I must be a total imposter and I'm not going to try that again. So they tend to shy away from trying new things that put them out of their comfort zone. And if they're not immediately good at something, they think that they're an imposter because of that. The third one then is the superhero. And the superhero can be brilliant in one area, but then they look at other people and see what they're doing and they think, well, you know, I need to be brilliant at absolutely everything. Otherwise, I'm an imposter. I need to be good at what Gillian's good at. I need to be good at what Michael's good at. And you want to be absolutely brilliant at everything. And if you're not brilliant at everything, then you think, I must be a total failure. I must be a total fraud. People are going to realize. And so this kind of imposter doesn't necessarily look at the fact that different people have different strengths and different people bring different things to the table. So it's about acknowledging and being aware of that. Then the fourth one then is the soloist. And the soloist is the kind of person who likes to work alone. They like to do everything on their own. And if they ever have to ask for help, then they feel they're undeserving of the accomplishments that they've made because other people have had input or they've had help from other people. And this is really difficult because it is, and I can definitely relate to this one, it's hard to ask for help. And if you feel like you don't deserve the accomplishments that you've had because someone else has helped you, then you're never going to ask for help. But the key for this one is really asking for the help that you needed and knowing that it takes a lot of strength to ask for help, and that just because you had help on something doesn't make the accomplishment any less of your own. The fifth one then is the expert. And this is the kind of person who says, well, I'm not really an expert in that area because I haven't reached the top of my game. And I still need to get a qualification to do this. And there's always more training to do, just one more qualification. And they sort of get in their own way around, you know, I can't call myself an expert, or I'm a total fraud. And this kind of person, if they get asked a question and they don't know the answer to it, then that's when that really triggers their imposter syndrome, and they think, oh, well, I'm not an expert, and they're going to find out that I'm a total fraud because I wasn't able to answer that question. So the expert needs to have that level of expertise, and they're always seeking new learning, and nothing is ever good enough. They've never reached the top of their game enough to call themselves an expert. And so what can we do about it? I always work with my clients around this idea of ABC. It's easy to remember. So A is for acknowledge, B is for believe, and C is for call to action. I'll go through each one of those one by one and run through exactly what it means. So we have A for acknowledge first. And really that is about saying to yourself, you know, questioning the thoughts that you have, because the imposter syndrome, it's in your head. It's not external to you. It's just in your head. And really acknowledging what is the imposter saying, and take out a piece of pen and paper and even jot it down, but ask yourself, is it true? And raising your awareness of what the imposter is actually saying, but also thinking about it like this, that it's, you know, saying, is this imposter syndrome, or this is imposter syndrome. So just being aware that there is this thing called imposter syndrome, and maybe I have imposter syndrome. Maybe I'm not a total another fraud. Maybe there is some truth in this. So knowing really that it is in your head, you have a choice when it comes to this. You can choose to believe the thoughts that you're having, or you can choose to do something about it, but really question, what is it saying? And is it true? So if my imposter is saying, I'm not good enough to apply for that job, is that actually genuinely true and objectively true? And to bring the kind of gender element into it, oftentimes women suffering from imposter syndrome, they would have maybe 9 out of 10 of the criteria that are required for a job, and they won't apply. But when it comes to men, then men might have 6 out of the 10 and they will apply for that same job. So it's about being aware of what it takes to actually, when it comes to applying for those jobs. Name it. So either you can say, well, is that imposter syndrome, or as I do, give your imposter a name. So my imposter's name, and I don't want to offend anyone out there, but my imposter's name is Sandra. So if Sandra starts rearing her ugly head and say, Aoife, you're not good enough to do that, or who do you think you are, or what do you think you're doing? Then I can say, well, is that me saying that, or is that Sandra saying that? And, you know, it makes it easier to tell Sandra to shut up than to tell Aoife to shut up. Write down your achievements. And so this is something that's really, really important and really beneficial. And think you feel so great just by acknowledging what your achievements that you've had. But you can take it a step further as well and talk about not just your achievements, but the skills that were required in order to achieve what you have achieved in your life. Thinking about imposter syndrome as it's not about you. So if you're letting imposter syndrome get in the way of the people that you're trying to serve, so think about whatever scenario you're in, whether that's dealing with clients, whether it's sharing your ideas, it's not about you. It's about the people who will benefit as a result of you being more open or performing better in your job. And getting rid of the imposter syndrome, how many more people can you benefit by progressing through your career, by sharing your talents with other people? So thinking about it like that. B then is for believe. And the first element of this is taking what you've written down as what the imposter says and flip that. So what the imposter says, they're all limiting you in your current situation and they're keeping you there. How can you turn that around? So to go from something like you're not good enough to do that, or I'm not good enough to do that, or to apply for that job, how can you turn it around and say something more positive? For example, I am learning every day how to improve. I am taking actions. So something that's positive and something that is true for you as well. So in order to get out of your own way, try and flip that and put a line through what the imposter is saying as well. If you find it hard to believe in yourself, and I know that a lot of people do, look for feedback. Ask people for some very specific but positive feedback. So, you know, say that you're not looking for constructive feedback at this time. You might get feedback on, could I get some feedback? Can you just remind me why I got this promotion? Can you just remind me or let me know why you chose me for this particular role? And you don't have to tell your boss that you have imposter syndrome. You know, you can just be looking for feedback from people. Ask a trusted friend, ask a few of your friends, what am I really good at that other people are not good at? And that can help to build up the belief that you have in yourself when you hear other people saying it as well. The call to action then, so that's really about identifying what is the first step that you can take to change this. So based on what I said today, what is the first step that you can take? What is one thing, just one small thing? And I'm not asking you to change the world. What is one small thing that you can do differently as a result of what I'm saying today? So identifying that first step. And oftentimes we find it difficult, and especially those soloists out there, we find it difficult to ask for help, but just look for help where you need it. Do you need help to get started on something? Do you need help or advice? And you're in the right place here today to seek out that help. The other thing as well is not to look at mistakes as failures. We have a tendency as people to think, oh, we've totally failed, we've totally messed something up. But look for the opportunity and don't talk about it as failure, talk about it as a learning and take the opportunity to learn from those mistakes. So take time to reflect, what would I do differently? What will I do differently next time based on what based on the experience that I've had, identify what went well and what might I do differently next time. And I heard something recently that really resonated with me. I really, really liked it. And it was giving feedback as, well, you did a really, really good job. Next time it will be even better if. And so the feedback was kind of called even better if feedback. So you did a great job. It will be even better if you did this next time. So taking that type of approach for yourself as well and applying, how are you going to learn from these mistakes? So that's a kind of a summary of what we can do about managing our own imposter syndrome. It's about acknowledging, it's about believing in yourself, and it's about that call to action then. So what is that first step that you're going to take as a result? And I want you to get rid of this phrase, fake it till you make it. So many people talk about faking it till you make it. And fake in and of itself implies that you're a fraud. It implies that you're faking it in some way. And I want you to get rid of that and talk more about believe and you will achieve. So build up your belief in yourself and you will go on to achieve really, really great things. So if you want to find out more about me, you're welcome to go to the website impostersyndrome.ie. I have a imposter syndrome quiz, so that determines which of the 5 types you are. It's just a fun quiz. I also have a free guide called From Imposter to Empowered, and that is the 3 steps to overcoming imposter syndrome. That was the steps that I talked you through today. So this is a guide. You can fill out your own details, and I have some very specific examples shared within there as well. And then if you want to reach out to me directly, they're all on my social media channels there. I also have a podcast called Happier at Work Podcast, which is available anywhere you listen to podcasts. And there's some time for questions. If anyone wants to ask any questions as well, pop them up. And I will be in the booth as well for the next, well, until 4 o'clock today.